Hey guys, welcome to the Laying Foundations podcast. This is your co-host Davis Hambrick. Joining alongside me today is Walker Lott. What's up, Walker?
Davis, what's up, dude? I'm gonna start this podcast out a little bit different than we normally do it. I'm gonna read a leadership quote, just kind of spur our thinking a little bit, let our listeners get something new. This is by Tony Robbins, and he says, "Success leaves clues. Go figure out what someone who is successful did and model it, improve it, but learn from their steps. They have knowledge." I think that's a pretty good quote, and I think it's very relevant to a lot of things we talk about today. Today we have Jonny Green. He is a project manager for Layton Construction. He's working on the Vanderbilt project. Last week, if you remember, we had McKelvey on with us. He was the APM. And so Jonny is a fantastic leader. I got the opportunity to be under him and learn from him a ton over the summer and really get to experience what a great leader does and how he reacts. I mean, Davis, I know we love leadership and we love growing and learning more and getting to interview leaders from across the country from different companies. What is something that you took from this podcast and just kind of you want to go with it and bring it to the rest of your life and apply it?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking, Walker. I think this week, guys, is a great opportunity to learn and grow in different areas. Jonny was very good at having a very humbling perspective just from talking about these things that he's never studied before, but that's just how he lives. This is what he does. It comes natural to
Right.
him, but it doesn't matter what stage in your life. He's just being willing and honest to talk about, hey, I view this person as someone that I'm just assisting. I'm not above them, or
Hmm.
I'm just a humble guy that doesn't want my pride to ever overcome the project. And those two those two things alone in leadership just amazing, and it just speaks volumes about Jonny. And I think, guys, y'all are going to have a great opportunity to learn from him, and we're just so excited that we get to put this out.
Yeah, same, man. Just be listening in, guys, and really tune into what he has to say. Some of the things we're going to cover are just making decisions. Just make them. It doesn't have to be the right one all the time. Just make a decision. Another thing he talks about staying humble. Harbor a good culture of humility. Tell the truth. Be honest. Admit your faults, and just stay humble because ultimately humility is the best thing that you can have, and because it's going to take you a lot further in life than being arrogant and prideful and thinking you know everything. Because construction, especially, will humble you real quick, as we both know, even not being in the industry for so long. But I'm really excited to hear from Jonny, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. So, without further ado, Jonny Green. What's up, Jonny? Welcome to the podcast. We got a real treat today. Today we have Jonny Green. He is the PM for Layton Construction on the Vanderbilt project. I actually got the opportunity to get to know Jonny pretty well over the summer. He was my project manager last week. I know y'all heard McKelvey. McKelvey is the APM on the same project, and these two work hand in hand and really close together on everything. But Jonny, what's going on? Really happy that you're here. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm impressed with what you guys are doing, so I'm glad to be here, buddy. So I'm a PM here in Nashville for Layton Construction. Like Walker mentioned, I'm on a big. It's about a $400 million 3-phase dorm project there at Vanderbilt University. Been with Layton 3.5 years or so. Moved to Nashville around that same time. That was the time that I moved to Nashville. I was on the road before that with a different company. So I went to Auburn, was in building science, graduated in 2015. And kind of my story of how I got into construction. My dad was a mechanical contractor when I was growing up. He's in kind of a different industry now, but so I had a general sense of what the process was for building big buildings. They did big industrial, Tropicana plants and Nike factories and stuff like that. So I had kind of a basis for it. Wasn't necessarily going to Auburn for construction at all. In fact, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and probably came to building science like a lot of people did. You just kind of get to Auburn and you find a buddy who's in it and you're like, man, that sounds awesome. I want to get in that. And funny enough, I had lost my scholarship at Auburn. because I had no drive. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have anything to push for. I regret that obviously now, but I was sitting there at our house with a buddy of mine who was a couple years older than me. He was in town. We were going deer hunting, and my dad kind of put his foot down, and he was like, "Look, you're going to stay at Auburn. You're going to get a major that stands on its own. Prefer it to be kind of in the technical engineering, science." He didn't really care, but he was always leaning towards that way. My buddy was sitting there on the couch, and it was such a God thing, man. He was like, "You'd be good at what I do." And I walked through what that was for about an hour with him, and changed my major the next day. And my grades went way up because I actually knew, I was doing something I enjoyed. Ended up meeting my wife in the program. She was in construction for a little while. So yeah, it ended up being a huge blessing. Went to work for a company out of Birmingham. I was with them for a couple of years. We moved to Fayetteville, Arkansas, right after we got married, about 5 months after we graduated. And I built an apartment complex up in Fayetteville. Really, really cool, quick hitting, fast schedule, stick frame structure up there. And they had some turnover at the top, kind of changed their business model. And my wife wanted to get back to Nashville. She actually came to Nashville after we graduated for a few months. And my parents and my brother live here. And so we relocated to Nashville. Had a couple of buddies that still work for Layton, that got both of us linked up. Actually, my wife and I worked at Layton together for a little while. And she has since left the industry actually and gone a different route. But I'm still there, been a Vandy the whole time, and it's been a blast ever since.
Jonny, I love that story, man. That's a unique perspective. I love to hear about how your dad was a mechanical contractor and then you met your wife in the program. But one of the most common themes that Walker and I have shared from these previous podcasts is, most of these guys just fumbled into construction. Nobody really knows how they got into it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is, there's so many different paths and so many people just fumble into it. What if we had a great idea of trying to channel that to get guys into what fits them? So really just transitioning here, I'm interested to hear about your dad as a mechanical contractor. Did you work with him ever while he was growing up, or how did that go?
No, I really didn't. He was a vice president of a company out of Jackson, Tennessee. I grew up in Memphis, and so he wasn't on job sites every day or managing the work. He was an upper management type of guy, and so kind of his day to day was way above my head. And about around high school, when would have been a good time for me to get in the field for his company that he worked at. He changed where he worked as well. That the company had some issues, and he kind of changed his industry as well. But it's a good segue. Our industry is ironically the name of your podcast, is a really good foundation to go a lot of different routes. Even if you don't stay in construction for your entire career, people work for architecture firms, people work for subcontractors, people work in the insurance industry, which is where my dad and my brother are now. And so if construction is not exactly where you want to be, it's a very good segue into a lot of other things as well. It's a very, very enjoyable industry. But no, I did not work for my dad. He had kind of transitioned by the time that it made sense for me to start working, and I was playing like 9 sports at the time, so I wouldn't have had time for it anyway. But yeah.
So, Jonny, kind of going a little bit in a different direction, and as if you've heard or whoever's listening, you've heard earlier podcasts, I've spoken of a project manager who is really an incredible leader, and I know Davis wants to talk more about this too. But one thing that I think attributed a lot to your really great leadership ability comes from a lot of your experiences that you've had in the construction industry, especially at an early age. And one thing that I remember speaking with you about is with your first company that you were with in Fayetteville, how you kind of got thrown into the fire in the management role, and you were pretty much the only one running a new apartment complex as a brand new project manager, brand new to the construction industry. Can you kind of speak on that a little bit and kind of how that shaped you going forward?
Yeah, at the time, it was an immense amount of stress, right? When I was in it, I didn't like it too much, but it ended up being a huge blessing. My project manager on that project was in Birmingham, and he came to the job site a ton. I don't want to belittle how much he was involved, but the day-to-day, that was kind of a superintendent heavy company. They really emphasized maximizing field leadership, which was a good thing. You know, I didn't create my own problems. I just helped solve them. So I, you know, anything that needed to get coordinated came through me. I was on site, like you said, I was a green PE straight out of college. And I like trial by fire. I learned how to swim because my dad threw me in the deep end, you know, and that's just the kind of person I am. And that's how I choose to lead. And Walker, you experienced that. Is I made a ton of mistakes, an immense amount of mistakes, things that I'll never do again because I made them. And I didn't have a leash around my neck holding me back. I was given the opportunity to excel and grow and make mistakes and get better and create relationships. I mean, I was calling our owner and our architect. They had an office right next to each other, and, you know, something needed to get done. I was the one. I went to the city and worked on permits. I got, you know, I was exposed to everything in the construction process. And I, again, while it was an immense amount of stress at the time for a young, newly married, you know, young guy, I wouldn't trade that for the world, because it gave me a lot of confidence. And it obviously, it set the foundation for where I am now.
Jonny, how many hours a week do you think you're working? I'm just curious.
Oh man. It was a solid 50. Definitely 60 if it needed to be. Walker can tell you I'm a goofy bird with work hours, man. I'm one of those that, you know, you're getting emails at 3 a.m. sometimes, and I've got a child now, so that's not as likely now these days. But back then I was all about getting to work, getting out of there, and then I'd go work out and eat dinner and hang out with my wife, and then I'd crank it back up about 9 p.m. and do paperwork. And that's going into, you know, as a PE, I was doing things that PEs don't do, and that created a significant amount of work. But yeah, it was probably an average of 55 or 60.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that, I think you spoke on, and we could go a few different ways with this, but you know what I see is a guy that's willing to learn. I know you got thrown into the fire, but Walker and I have talked about how you got to sometimes have that go get it attitude where, okay, I don't know everything, but I'm going to go do the best that I can. If I make mistakes, that's okay. We don't have to, woe is me, I messed up, you know, it's the end of the world. You know, people are going to be there to help you pick back up and get to go. But I love that you're willing to go in there, make mistakes and learn from it. And I think it was really valuable for you. And one of the things that I want to ask you is, whenever you were in that position as a project engineer, you know, how did you add value to the guy that was above you? So whether it's an APM or a project manager, I think that's a common theme for young guys getting into the industry. It is, how do I add value to the guy that's above me to where I'm filling his role, but he's also able to do more things because I'm helping him?
Yeah, I've got two kind of comments to that. One is right when I got in the industry, I'm talking like day 3 or 4. I hopped in the car with one of the project managers at my old company, and we drove up to Little Rock. I was helping him do some closeout, waiting on that favorable job to start. And some of the best advice I ever got was day 4 on the job. And he told me, he said, man, all I can tell you is make decisions. And after being in the industry for a few years, I understand what he means. You know, as a project manager, I can fix a wrong decision that was made timely. I can never fix a decision that was never made. And so if we sit and we wait, that's time. If we make a wrong decision, there's at least a ball moving forward, and we can redirect that ball. So that was some of the best advice I've ever gotten, and I've continued to live that way. That kind of spurred my, as you worded it, the go get it attitude is, to make that decision, figure out the problem, figure out the solution, and make a decision. You got to know your lane. You got to know your pay grade, right? There's definite decisions that you can't make. And I still experience that. Project manager is not the top of the ladder, but that was number one. Number two, and McKelvey actually helped me wrap my head around this as well, is you always want to make your boss's job easier. And so one of the ways that is, especially with the guy being on site, with my project manager off site most of the time, was I tried very hard to never come with only problems, but have also already come with a solution. And that might not be the right solution. That my 6 months of experience may not have gotten me the right answer. But again, in the same light of my first comment of making a decision, I at least had started the ball rolling and gotten information from subcontractors and brought all of the information to my project manager or my superintendent so that they can make a decision if need be. So that's always is, bring all of the information, have all of the facts, as much as you can gather, and then present an issue, up the ladder.
I love that. I love that, because there's so many people nowadays that just bring the problem and aren't willing to problem solve. And if you can, you brought the answer. You don't know if it's right or wrong, but hey, I'm coming. I'm showing that I'm ready and willing to learn, and I'm going to bring the answer. I love that. And the other piece of that was make decisions. This is something Walker and I love. A guy that we really like, his name's Aaron Witt. It's called Dirt Talk Podcast, and one of his core values is make decisions. He wants to empower his people. It doesn't matter who's in his company. If it's the lowest man on the totem pole, make a decision. I love it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the advice that you just gave is incredible for anyone listening, not just in the construction world. It's very applicable to anywhere, anytime in life. That is fantastic advice. And one thing that you haven't mentioned yet, and something that I very much respect and took with me, one of the many things I took with me from my internship working with you, is one thing that you said stuck with me, is that when you are in a leadership position or whatever you are, and you're helping someone and you're helping lead them through a new job or wherever, that in order for you to go higher, in order for you to get a promotion or wherever you want to go, you have to train the person below you to take your position, and they have to be able to work at your position, even though that's not their job title, in order for you to go higher. So basically, by bringing someone else up, that enables you to go up as well. What most people don't really, most people are either scared to help someone because they think they're going to take their job, or they think that they're going to be better than them. But that's the goal. That's what you want. You want someone to come in and be better than you, so you can go somewhere else that you are better in order to make the whole company better, or your whole business, or whatever you're in. I really much respect that with you, and I love how you do that.
Yeah, so to kind of give you a framework of our team at Vanderbilt, Walker, this, Davis, you probably don't, but we have a PE on site. We have McKelvey and APM on site. I'm a project manager, and then we have what Layton calls a construction manager, and his name's Sean. And there really is no role that is a project engineer. It's just an APM who doesn't know that much yet. And so what you're doing is you're grooming a project engineer to be an APM. And you can ask McKelvey, especially on the second building at Vanderbilt, he's an APM, but he's doing project manager work. I'm just there to oversee it. And I'm trying to do senior PM work, right? I'm trying to communicate with our owner more and deliver schedule updates to our owner more, things that Sean, my construction manager, typically does. And it's the same type of role, right? Is you can't be a PM until you know how to be a PM. And so you have to be doing PM work while you're an APM. And same thing here. I'm hoping and trying and striving to do senior PM work in my day-to-day tasks. I'm just not there yet to call me a senior PM. And so you're exactly right, Walker. The best thing you can do, I mean, if you look around at some of the best industry leaders, construction or otherwise, look at Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. The best thing they can do is hire the best people, because if they don't have them, then they're somewhere else. And if you let your pride get in the way of that, you'll never succeed, or you'll get beat by someone else. And so I can tell you right now, Dave Layton just wants the best people in the world working for Layton Construction, because that it makes him money and makes his company successful, you know.
Right. I love that. And Jonny, who taught you that, the specifics of, you know, I want someone to be, did anyone teach you that about how someone needs to be filling this role or this role? Or is that just something you came about? Because I feel like that's absent in a lot of companies, to be honest. I think that, yeah, there will be people you can go to that are above you that you're going to learn from, but to actually know that, hey, the project engineer is going to be trying to do APM work. The APM needs to be doing PM. I love that. Who taught you that?
It was a little bit self-taught. I have heard people, a guy I work closely with in our estimating department on most of the Vanderbilt projects, on all of the Vanderbilt projects, actually, you know, he kind of has said those similar words before, you know, if you want to move up, you better have trained your replacement, you know, because someone has to fill your role. And that's a loose statement that has specifics based on the situation of the project that you're on and stuff like that. But it was a little bit self-taught, because I was a fairly young project manager promotion, and I really had to understand. I wasn't even sure I was ready in my own mind, and I had to understand that, no, there's people above me who are telling me that I'm doing this right, and I'm blessed to have people that quote unquote work under me. I don't view them that way. They work with me, but how can I encourage McKelvey to be a project manager and enable Olivia, our PE, to be an APM, and any other PE that comes in on Vanderbilt, because we have such a big team and a big project that it's a little bit self-taught, because I want nothing but the best. I always joke I'm going to work for McKelvey one day, and I still, even now, I will joke that I work for McKelvey and Olivia now. My job is to assist them, and they are the ones running the job. Trust me. I'm just there to help make decisions, like I said. And there is a stopgap there of making decisions, but I want nothing more than to enable them to succeed, because the leadership that comes out of that is way more important than me being a good PM or whatever, you know.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Do you know, or do you know about John Maxwell? Have you heard about him? Have you ever? John Maxwell.
John Maxwell.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar, but enlighten me.
Because, I mean, you just spoke that. I mean, what so many people don't realize is the position as leadership is the least amount of leadership at any point. So your position and your rank, you're holding rank over someone, is the least, the bottom of the bar of what leadership can be. And you already know that, hey, you know, I'm not, you know, I know McKelvey's the APM, but he's really not. I'm here to assist him and grow him. And I love that attitude. John Maxwell talks about going and having the person that's willing to be a mentor to where you are replicating kind of yourself to where they're able to fill your role. And that's the pinnacle point. And I think that's what you're doing. I love that. You know, you haven't even read about it, don't even know about it, but you do it. And I think that speaks volumes about you. Is there anything you do to invest in leadership? Are there podcasts you listen to, maybe a book? Is there anything like that, or is it just stuff that you just value?
I don't necessarily study it that much. There are avenues that I've studied in the past. You know, my wife now works for Ramsey Solutions, and Dave Ramsey is obviously all about leadership and
there you go.
And encouraging business and progress, and Sometimes it's in the personal finance realm, but oftentimes it's in the business world. I think, and Sean has taught me a lot. Sean, our construction manager, is not too far from retirement, to be honest. And so he says all the time, he's like, I want to walk away knowing that all these guys got it. And I'm no different than that. I shouldn't be. I should have nothing in mind other than, hey guys, let's freaking hitch ourselves to this wagon and go. With what Layton's, doing and trying to do in Nashville, I'm not gonna. A good thing that I try to harbor is my pride, and if I let my pride get in the way of something like that, that's a monumental mistake for our business, our industry, and especially those people that look up to me.
Yeah, I mean, Jonny, you do a great job already of pouring into people and not letting your pride get in the way. Because one thing I can speak to is something really cool for me, especially being an intern, not knowing very much, but being on such a massive project. It's kind of intimidating, all the people around you, because everyone pretty much knows a lot more than you do. But one thing that really set with me was, throughout meetings, you told me and Drew, the other intern, that if there's something you don't know, then come to me with the question. Ask me about it. Write down everything you heard in a meeting that you've never heard before. You don't know what it is, and come to me and we'll talk about it. And one thing that's really cool, especially, at one time we were talking about finances, especially finances on the job site, and you took over an hour and talked to me and Drew about, hey, this is what goes on, this is how the spreadsheets look, this is how I manage the job finances, and this is how I manage the company finances. And that was really cool for me, especially to see it from people involved in such a large job site and able to slow down a little bit and take time to let people learn. And that just definitely speaks to your leadership. One thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is really the learning curve that you had coming in to Layton, and especially being on such a large project, having to deal with so many different new things. Because I know that every single superintendent, project manager on this job site hasn't seen half the things that have gone into Vanderbilt. I know that Baselfon is a fun word that McKelvey taught me, and that's something that no one's really ever seen before. I don't know what this is, what's going on, how we put this in, but let's do it. So what can you speak on just having a figure it out type, I don't know what this is, I've never done this before, but we're going to do it and we're going to figure it out no matter what attitude?
It goes back to pride a little bit. I'm young enough, I can still ride the I don't know train a little bit, but coming to Layton and this project and managing finances and those specific items is you have to be willing to ask questions to the people who know. And I luckily had a good friend of mine that I graduated with who was a project manager before I was, and if I had a question, I'd call him. I had a good basis for that from my experience in Fayetteville. I got exposed to a lot. My PM said, man, if you can do it, run it. And I did. I took it and I ran with it. I didn't, going back to what you said about work hours, Davis, I chose more hours and learning more than the opposite. But putting your pride aside is big, and being able to ask the question, and that goes back to making a decision. Still, making a wrong decision when it's wrong is still not what I mean by making a decision. It's being able to learn so that you can confidently make more decisions. And that was a big part of it, and there's technical things like, what buttons do I click in this computer software to make this do what I need it to do, right? I know what I need it to do. Show me how to do it. And I can go back to company training and all kinds of things that are important. When I'm sitting there needing to execute something, I picked up the phone and found somebody who knew what they were talking about and asked them how to do it. And then I knew it from then on. And when you do that 15, 20 times, 20 ways to do stuff, and you probably got most of it down. And if you don't know, there's someone who does. So they'll find it. And it's important to work for a company that harbors that culture. There's no one in Layton that I'm too scared to call to ask a question to make the right decision about, and that's important.
I think that speaks volumes about you, Jonny. You talk about you're willing to ask questions, to kind of put your pride out the door before you come in. You're willing to mentor people, and this is stuff that you just say it's come natural to you. I think that's awesome. I wish that would have come natural to me. I'm a lot more, I guess, stubborn and hard-headed than you, but we were talking about finances there for a second, and Walker talked about you bringing up the financial statements and talking about and explaining it to the interns. Can we talk about maybe the importance of cash flow on the project? I know it's kind of this, this term that people kind of get big eyes when you hear cash flow and don't really understand. If you can do your best to try to explain it to us.
Yeah. So one of the key points you learn in college is the number one cause for bankruptcy in construction is lack of cash flow. If you're not moving money, even for large companies like Layton, you have to move money. You have to get paid on time. You got to pay your bills. You got to do your pay applications correct so that you get paid on time. There's a multitude of those issues. Cash flow is king. Cash is king, especially in this industry. And you'll hear my construction manager Sean say it all the time, like, we don't need the practice. We are here as at a surface level. We're here to make money. We're here to maintain relationships. We're here to get repeat work. We're here to do a lot of things like that, but we're ultimately here to make money. And we want to do it with honesty and integrity and things like that. But that is the goal. We wouldn't have a company. We would be called a not-for-profit if we weren't here to make money, right? So as a project manager, my number one job responsibility is to maintain the financial viability of the project, is to maintain profitability. And the way you do that is a lot of different ways. And one of the key ways is change management with your subcontractors and your owner, and not letting paperwork sit and waking up at 3 a.m. to get stuff written and submitted and signed and follow up and hound and push. But that is ultimately our goal, and that's ultimately my number one job responsibility and Sean's, and ultimately it's everyone's number one job responsibility. But that is in my duties as a project manager is to maintain profitability on the job site.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people, especially those not in construction and those very new to construction, don't understand is the different roles involved within construction. I know me and Davis have talked about it a lot, and we talked with a lot of different people so far who have been all over the place, all kinds of different roles. I know that coming in for me personally, when I got into building science, which is a reason why we started this podcast, is I had no clue anything about the roles in construction. I knew about construction. I built things in my life. I've done a lot of renovations. I love all that kind of stuff, but I didn't know about the industry of construction. I thought it was a hammer and a nail and a couple of carpenters and subcontractors, and they had a boss or two who managed everything. I didn't realize there was a pre-con department and a BIM and project managers, estimators, superintendents, and I think that's a huge misconception and just black area that people don't understand. They don't see into it. They don't know what goes on. So can you give us a brief overview? I know we just talked about finances and everything, but for you, what does a project manager do, and what are the major roles and responsibilities overall for them on the project and for them involved with the company itself?
Yeah, that's a great question, Walker. It's funny you mentioned that no one knows kind of what we do. Everyone's had a home renovation or has driven down the job site and gotten stuck in traffic because there's a pump truck on this street, and they're like, man, that building, it's really going up. That's a lot of concrete. Or I don't understand why my office building looks this way. Somebody must have built this. And to this day, I promise you, I get asked more than anyone else I know what I do. What do I do? What is my day to day? All the time. So are you an architect? No, I'm not an architect. I work with architects, but I'm not an architect. So are you like an engineer? Well, people who graduate in engineering, but I'm not an engineer. But yeah, the roles on the job site outside of the profitability, and the ways that we maintain profitability on the job, like I said, there's a myriad of ways to do that. Number one is finishing on time. You want to finish on time. You will spend a boatload of money on general conditions and job office trailers and overtime and all kinds of stuff if you're behind schedule. So the way that my role, and I'll say my role in PE, APM, PM, all the way up to Sean as a construction manager, is to make sure that we have things coordinated, figured out, and material on the job site so that our superintendents can go build it, right? They're managing the subcontractors, putting it in place. If they don't have the answers they need, if they don't have the material here, if they got a subcontractor who's not signed up in our insurance program, if there's not a contract written, all of those types of things, they can't do their job. And it's the reason that I chose project manager over superintendent. I love what superintendents do. I hate the stopgap that's between the field and the office. I don't believe in it. I think it's an integrated, just combined effort to succeed on the project. There can be rifts. Luckily, my current situation, I work with incredible superintendents. And I'm a planner. I like to plan. And I like to know when things are coming, when they're going to happen. Can I map it out? I love scheduling. I love getting stuff organized and situated so that we can be efficient and succeed. You can ask my wife. I ask her every morning, what are we doing today, so that I can map it out, because that's what I do day to day, right? And so it's why I chose what I did. I like to solve the problems before they're a problem, and make sure that things are here so that other people can do their job. So those are avenues that I, as a project manager, can maintain profitability on the project. Is if my superintendent doesn't have what he needs to build the job in a correct flow with minimal waste and minimal rework and jumping around, then those are all things that cost money and time, and those things are expensive. And so having things coordinated, having things purchased, having things in Nashville instead of in Canada or China or Italy, those are all very critical things that my team focus on.
Jonny, you mentioned a really integral part, I think, about construction is the project manager and superintendent relationship. And I think it's kind of ironic, Walker wants to be a project manager and I want to be a superintendent, and, we're doing this thing together. But talk about that a little bit. I think it's, kind of paramount. You got to have you have to have a great relationship, but sometimes there's a riff, and sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy. But just tell us about what that relationship's like, and maybe some of the good and the bad in it.
Yeah, kind of at a high level, the cost report is mine and the schedule is the superintendent's, right? He's mapping out how to get this stuff in the right order, in the most efficient way, keeping all the personalities on the job site straight and working together. And so he's focusing on the most efficient way to put this thing together. And I want him to do it in the most cost efficient way. That doesn't mean I'm not willing to spend money when it makes sense. And so a good relationship there is, again, going back to the pride issue. Like, I am in our scheduling meetings, not because I want to get in his world or make him feel like that's not his place. I want to be in our schedule meetings so I can say, there was an RFI on that elevation that you're wanting to start masonry on, then I need to make sure it's coordinated and taken care of. So I go immediately into Olivia and say, where are we at with this RFI? If I need to get on the phone with the architect, let me know. And so the riff there is usually involving money. Because if we had a lot more money, the superintendents would have mobile cranes everywhere, and everybody be working 70 hours a week, and
they'd have it built like it.
Yeah, that's right. They'd be sending me overtime tickets, like, here, figure this out. I'll get all this stuff put in place. And so you have to manage that. And I'm not saying that it's always a negative feel. My superintendent on RCB, the second building we're building, is great with cost. Superintendents on A are great with cost. They understand that spending money is ultimately a reflection on them as well at the end of the day. And so if you can work together, understand what's important to them, schedule is important to them, and cost is important to me. And but we meet in the middle. It's like a Venn diagram, right? We overlap a little bit in the middle. That's key. But ultimately, it's just communication. The superintendent can come in and say, "Man, this is." He's got to let me know if he sees something that I didn't see. Hey, this is going to be a big deal. Get this figured out. And it's my responsibility to not brush that off. I can't brush that off. He's telling me he needs it. I got to get an answer. I got to get material here. I got to call every vendor in the United States and get this material here so that he can put it in. And we've done that. We've done that at Vanderbilt. We found all of the material that's certain. McKelvey did it, actually. Found all of the stone that's going in our elevator lobbies in the entire country. And you know, that's not letting construction defeat us. That's defeating construction.
Yeah, I like that. I love that a lot, actually. One of the things you hit on, you talked about personalities and the superintendent really keeping the personalities together, rounded up. You know, I've heard from a professor, I think it's Professor Carter. I don't know if he was there when you were still in building science, but he talked about it's kind of like herding cats. You know, it's one of the hardest things to do. And one of the things that got me into leadership, one of the things I keep asking about, Jonny, is my aunt taught me about personalities. And as a superintendent, that's what I'm going into. Personality is what's got me into leadership. And then that's even transformed. And I don't know if you're going to like this or not, or you might, but I got into entree leadership, and that's the Ramsey Solutions from Dave Ramsey. And just this world of leadership, of how the superintendent and project manager, in my mind, on what we can take it to be to make jobs perform better is something that I'm very passionate about. But talk about that a little bit more. The personality aspect, I think people, I don't know how to describe it. You know, I'm trying to do the best I can here, but our previous podcast guest was Jasper. And one of the things he talked about was people too oftentimes get their feelings hurt because they don't know someone else's personality and how they can't articulate how you are to them. So the way they're doing that is taking their frustration out. Tell me a little bit about that if you can, if that made any sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a sign of leadership and experience as well. I mean, there comes a day where you just have to say, I need this. We're not going to talk about it anymore. Like, you're going to do this. But when I say personalities, I mean, you know, different subcontractor, superintendent personalities react a lot of different ways. And I think the easiest way to relate it to is yourself. I am not the type that when I get yelled at, I do well. I'm not. Don't yell at me, because you're not going to get what you want out of me. If you have an honest conversation about something I messed up and you want me to do it better, I promise you it will be perfect the next time I do it. But yelling at me doesn't do it. Some people need that. Some people need to be scared into doing what they need to do. And some people, you know, will not do it being yelled at out of spite or whatever. And so when you use yourself as kind of a benchmark, when you're dealing with a subcontractor or an owner or an architect, how do they react? Do they respond well when they're put on the spot? If they don't, then give them a call before the meeting and say, hey, I'm gonna bring this issue up. You might want to do some research on it because I'm going to ask you about it. You know, we have owner, architect, contractor meetings, and we try to make sure that the architect has a fair shake at the questions we're going to ask. You know, I like to give my architect a heads up. Hey, I'm going to ask you about this change order or this RFI. This is hot. I'm going to bring it up. And, you know, that at least allows them to prepare a response. And then as you learn and a bunch of experience, but also experience through the job, like early on in the job, you may say something that isn't the way you should have said it, and you learn that. And so 2 months later, you're like, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way because this guy doesn't react that way. And so that's really it. Is you may have one conversation that's very heated and very direct with this guy, and you may have a buddy conversation with this guy and get the exact same result. So you just have to understand how people operate, and that takes time. And some of these guys have been in the industry for 40 years. They've worked with everybody already, and they're like, oh yeah, Richard, he was on my last job. I remember Richard. And, you know, that can happen, and you just have to learn how people react. Again, there's a breaking point there. There's a point where I don't care anymore, and I need an answer or a response or material or more manpower, and that's how that conversation is going to go. But early on in the conversation, you figure out how people respond the best.
Yeah, that was fantastic advice, and definitely speaks to a construction site from my experience. You know, a ton of different people, a ton of different ways people react and respond. One thing that I love is, I got to kind of be a fly on the wall, what you were talking about in one of our meetings, that, if don't be afraid to mess up. One, we talked about that earlier, but the thing is, don't be afraid to admit that you messed up, because when you admit it, the sooner you can, we can solve the problem that much sooner. That was something really cool. He's like, we might be mad at you for a little while, a couple minutes, but then we'll settle down and say, all right, how can we solve this problem? I appreciate you coming to me before it was even bigger. And, I love that. I thought that was awesome. But we're starting to run out of time, so I wanted to get to at least one more question with you, and kind of something we like to ask every guest that we have on this show, because I think it definitely relates a lot to people in any age, but especially the audience that we're trying to reach, which is the younger generation coming up into construction. And because of the labor gap and everything else that we have, we really need people who want to work hard, who want to be in an industry that's responsible for building the country, because construction is never going away, and the need for labor is never going away. And this question is not related to labor and that area, but it's really related to what can we do, what knowledge can we learn now and going forward in life that we don't have to learn on our own, because we have people like you who are great leaders and have a lot of wisdom that they can share with us now. So with that being said, now knowing what you know now and all the experiences that you had as a assistant project manager, as a project manager, as a PE, running a job site, you name it, as a father, as a husband, what is some advice that you would give to your 20-year-old self, to the younger generation coming up, that you wish you knew back then, that you've learned from wisdom and experience now?
I would say number one is stay humble. Everything I've said so far, as far as making decisions and relationships and things like that, is the humility, to realize that it's a team effort. That's one avenue of humility. Like, I'm not a project manager. I'm on a team of guys and girls that are building this project, right? And so harboring a good culture of humility and of a safe space. Like I said, I want to know that there's a problem way more than I want you to try and cover it up on your own. And that's never going to result in fact, there's been a lot of people who have been fired for trying to do that, and not just at Layton, just in life. You're going to get fired if you try and cover something up, in my opinion. And just some of I try and live by this all the time, is always tell the truth, man. That way you don't have to remember what you said. Just tell the truth and be honest, and own your mistakes. And like you said, if you don't cover that up and you address things that are happening and issues and problems and find the answer, you can move forward. And that's, you said, as a father, as a husband, as anything else, admitting fault and putting your pride aside in every aspect of your life is probably number one, because you can't learn if you don't accept that you made a mistake. And I try and do that. I don't know that I do it well all the time, but I try and do it. I do blow up and my pride does get in my way. There's no doubt. But as a general rule of thumb, that's what I try and do in multiple aspects of my life.
Yeah, well, we're all human. I mean, Walker blows up on me all the time, so he just doesn't tell you that.
Oh, whoa now.
I'm kidding.
I don't know about that one.
I'm kidding. But Jonny, man, we appreciate you being willing to take some time out of your day to talk to us. We got to talk about a lot of cool topics. I got to learn from a guy that, I'm excited to know more about, and I appreciate you being willing to speak with us today, Jonny.
Man, I'm proud to know you Davis now, and Walker as an intern of mine. To do something like this it's impressive, and I'm very honored to have been a topic of discussion on your podcast, man. I wish all the best of luck to y'all.
Man, we really
Appreciate
appreciate it, and so thankful for you and all that you do and being willing to come on here. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, buddy. Y'all be good and take it easy. And I look forward to hearing past and future podcasts you guys are putting out, man.
Appreciate it.